Hi, I'm Jaimy Lee. I'm the news editor at MM&M magazine. I am here today with Jim DeLash, Director of Multichannel Marketing at GlaxoSmithKline. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Jamie.
So I wanted to start, you've talked a lot about a new definition for multi-channel. And can you describe why there's a need and what's included in this definition?
Sure. I think multi-channel marketing is really evolving quickly, and the definition that I've given it is art and science of determining the optimal investment level for each customer segment. And why I think that's different is because it's not just about multiple channels, and a lot of marketers use multiple channels and call it multi-channel, and it's about the interaction of those channels for sure. But that's where I think a lot of companies and people stop. It's more than that because it's so unique to each customer segment. Because some segments are respondent more to different types of media. Sometimes the mix of media is more important. And really it's the investment level that you're really trying to manage. So nobody has an unlimited budget anymore. So you've got to look at it and say, how much do I invest in each segment? And then what's the right mix of media or channels within those segments? So I've got to really understand both the customer audience itself and then how the channels work. On top of that, what am I trying to offer to the audience? And what products am I trying to really promote at what level of spend? So that's why I think it's new. It's not brand-centric, it's customer-centric.
What changes are occurring with customer segmentation? Is that a factor in needing a new definition for something like this?
Yeah, I don't know how much customer segmentation is changing yet, but I think it needs to change more. Typically, customer segmentation is based on some sort of deciling, potential value of a segment, current value, things like that, and especially. But I think it's deeper than that because these are people we're talking to that behave very differently to different types of messages, and maybe they're more data sensitive versus more patient-centric in the way that a physician views their business. So we want to craft our messages around that state of mind for these physicians and not treat them all the same because they're different. And the question is, how many segments are there? And that depends on what insights we can get about these populations and then talk to them very differently. We tend to do a lot of segmentation research and then really with the idea of just cutting out certain segments and then talk to the rest of them the same, but they're not the same. So I'm arguing that they're different. Let's talk to them differently. Let's put a different mix of channels together, and let's invest in them at the right level.
So how does this affect creative then? What's going to change, or what would need to change there?
Well, creative needs to be planned more in advance. So, the med legal review team is always a scapegoat for trying to increase creative because we don't have time. I believe that if you plan ahead, you can do that because the argument is, I've got now 5 segments that I need 5 different types of messages for. I'm going to position the product 5 different ways. If you plan ahead with med legal, I think that the road to that approval is a lot smoother because it's in the doctor's best interest to get a more relevant message than if I'm a primary care doctor and I get a message that's more appropriate for a specialist, it's not going to connect with me. So what does that mean? That means I've got to send that message more and more often, which is just going to overwhelm the physician, the primary care doctor, who doesn't have time to look at our messages anyway. Whereas if we create something that's much more appropriate for that segment, it'll connect with them much quicker. So it'll really unclutter their market and their ability to absorb our message. So there's a win for everybody, and it just takes planning.
Is the primary factor for this change that there's less access for sales reps to physicians, and are there any other factors at play here?
Well, for sure, rep access to physicians is declining. There's also fewer reps than there used to be. So, and the physician landscape is changing. So there's all these changes that are going against the old days where reps would just get in and talk to doctors regularly. And how many times would you see multiple pharmaceutical sales reps in a physician's office? I think those days are gone. So we have to figure out ways to communicate with physicians in a more meaningful, consistent way that benefits the physician and not the pharma company. We tend to look at it through our lens and not the lens of our customer segments. We really need to accelerate that and look at it through these different segments so that we're reaching them in a way that really helps them provide value to their patients.
When did you first identify the need for a new definition for multi-channel?
It sort of came to me within the last year or so, but before that it was always when I would hear brand teams say, we're doing multi-channel marketing, and they really meant they're doing multiple channels because there was no connection of the media, there was no overlap, there was no saying, hey, if we send out an email followed by a direct mail, and followed by a print ad, that's really going to be more effective. Those were 3 separate decisions, not at all connected. And it dawned on me that we're looking at this in the wrong way. Then you start thinking about it in terms of segments and different populations and investment levels, and all of a sudden it became clear to me that we're looking at it the wrong way.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Jamie. Looking forward to it.